Almost 12 million people around the world may never go home again. 36 out of every 100 people in the world are refugees. And because of war and political unrest, those numbers are rising. Anyway, Dr. Glynis Williams and Colleen McCue work for Presbyterian World Services and Development, a humanitarian organization.
The United Nations has an official definition for a refugee, which is any person who is outside of their own country of origin and who fears persecution or a threat to their life on the basis of their race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion, and someone who is unwilling or feels unable to return to their home country.
Presbyterian World Services and Development, or PWS&D, provides humanitarian aid around the world and helps bring refugees to Canada through the Presbyterian Church.
Presbyterian World Service and Development has been active for more than 60 years, providing relief in times of disaster, long-term community development, educating Canadian Presbyterians about global needs and how they can participate, and helping congregations to sponsor refugees to come to Canada.
It's called private sponsorship, and it caters to refugees who'll need more help once they arrive than regular government agencies can provide.
Private sponsorship, they're on call 24/7, and that's the beauty of it. So yes, single women who are alone, who have had a very difficult time, or have large families, they're caring for lots of kids. Some of those children may have been had medical problems, either as a result of the war, the experiences that they've lived through, or for other reasons. So they can really benefit from congregational support as well.
There's a ton of paperwork involved, and PWS&D helps churches navigate through what can be a long process. But before they get the ball rolling, there's a few things churches need to know.
A congregation or a group would support a refugee or a family through the whole first year that they were in Canada. So there's definitely a financial commitment, but there's also a very big emotional and just labor-intensive work.
Next, a congregation must decide how large a family they can support and what region of the world they'd like to help.
And then we go on what's called a website run by Citizenship and Immigration Canada called Visa Office Referred. And these are have profiles, little stories of individuals or families that have been interviewed by the Canadian Embassy that they think would benefit from resettlement in Canada.
There's a hefty price tag to settle in Canada, and finding the money to sponsor a family can be a stumbling block for some churches.
It could vary depending on the size of the family, so a single individual, $10,000 would certainly be sufficient in most cities. Some of that depends on how much housing costs. So Toronto costs more. Some families, it could be you'd need $30,000 in order to support them.
And though it can have its challenges, the rewards are greater, says Colleen.
From what I've heard from the congregations across Canada, they feel like it's truly a way for them to put their faith into action. How can I lose hope when, you know, I see these people who have gone through so much and they're still, you know, trying to build a better life for themselves and their family. So that strengthens me.
Sponsoring a refugee family is no simple task. It's often a long-term commitment that requires not only money, but patience and volunteers willing to help a family settle once they're here. And that's why some congregations team up to sponsor a family together. Allan Budzin, Antwi Kim, and Paul Kang are three ministers who did just that. Allan pastors an Anglican church, while Antwi and Paul are Presbyterian.
Yeah, we invited a consultant from the Presbyterian World Service and Development to come and speak at our church, and Al having his church across the street, and Ingi being close also a church in the area. The three of us got together and invited our congregation members to hear.
And though their churches are just blocks away from each other, their congregations had never connected.
Paul's church and my church are right across the street from each other, and from what I heard when I first arrived at St. Philip's is that there could have been a 401 highway between the two churches because no one ever talked to each other or did anything. And so when Paul came here, after 4 years, I finally decided to cross the street and go and introduce myself.
The friendship between them was instant, but they wanted their members to connect too. Sponsoring a family together, they decided, would be the best way to do that.
We should be able, as brothers and sisters in Christ, to do something together interdenominationally. Sponsoring a refugee family is biblically a good biblical ministry, and we thought that is a good way to start and bring our two Christian congregations together in working on this.
A committee was formed with members from each church, and with that, the search was on to find a family they could support financially. They decided to help a Muslim refugee family from Afghanistan.
I think because of our country's involvement in Afghanistan, there was a concern to build on that and to do something for folks. Our soldiers are giving their lives for people of Afghanistan, and we thought we would want to do something similar to support a family from that country.
They chose the Mehdi Hussein family, headed by Farah Naz Mehdi, a single mother with 2 children who's lived in Pakistani refugee camps for over 9 years. Farah Naz was uncomfortable appearing on television, so Kathleen Kidd, a member of the sponsorship committee who works closely with the Mehdi Hussein family, agreed to share Farah's story.
Her mother died when she was 5, her father died when she was 7, but I guess even when her father was alive, he couldn't raise her on his own, so there were relatives that had no children, and so she was being raised by them from the age of 5.
According to Farah, to escape the Taliban, she walked from Afghanistan to a refugee camp in Pakistan.
She knew her husband. He was a relative, a distant cousin. She knew him as a child, and then met him again in the refugee camp in Pakistan. And so they married. And then his mother got ill back in Afghanistan, and I guess somehow they got word to him, and he felt he had to go back. And so he wanted her to come, but she was pregnant and had a small child, so she didn't, and he went back and has never been heard from since.
Farah suspects that the Taliban may have killed her husband, and though she waited for him for the sake of her children, she carried on.
She sometimes could get factory work where she'd make $1 a day, and other times she did housekeeping for Pakistani families, and she would make sometimes for hours of washing dishes and doing laundry, she'd make like the equivalent of 25 cents.
According to the United Nations, Afghanistan remains the top refugee-producing country in the world, with 3 million Afghan refugees. Since 2000, Canada has welcomed over 96,000 Afghan refugees, and in September of 2008, the Mehdi Hussein family became a part of that group.
I was glad that they were there. I was scared because, this was the beginning, and there was lots of work still to do, and I kept thinking how frightened they must be, and whether they thought we looked okay. So it was scary, but still really a warm, rewarding feeling knowing that we'd actually done it. For Inez, it's Kathleen.
The work is nowhere near finished. Learning English, employment, finances, healthcare, these are all things the family must learn to manage on their own. And though private sponsors are only obligated to look after a family for 1 year, the congregations have no intention of walking away anytime soon.
To me, this is why we go to church, because we're there to help other people. I mean, the worship and the service and the singing, and that's all important too, but this has definitely made me feel closer to God. I think we're communicating a message that Christians aren't here to convert people to Christianity, but that we're willing to help regardless.
Conversion is the last thing on their minds, say Allan, Antwi, and Paul. There's no agenda in helping a Muslim family, they say. Their main concern is showing through their actions the love of Christ.
In the modern world, we see a lot of religious factions and animosity among different faiths, and it's unfortunate that Christianity has been misunderstood by other faiths too. But we wanted to really show Christian love by, that's what Jesus taught us, that you give, somebody needs bread, you give bread. Somebody needs water, you give water.
But the Mehdi Hussein family are not the only ones who've been blessed, they say. Their congregations have been blessed also.
It's really fun to be at other churches. It's really fun.
Don't wait so long to cross the street and introduce yourself to the neighboring Christian community.
And I would encourage other churches to try something like this, a project that has a finite time limit and where you can experience and risk together and be vulnerable together and try new things. And if you fail, then what's the worst that can happen? try again.
And that's exactly what they intend to do. There are no plans yet to sponsor another family, but talks of a food bank and inviting other churches to join them in helping their own community of Etobicoke are in the works. There's only one thing these three have to say to those who aren't sure they can make a difference.
Do it. There's a big need there, and this is a faithful way of making the love of God very concrete and touching the hearts of those who are broken and bringing healing into their lives.
To find out more about World Refugee Day, visit crossroads.ca and click on guest information. In Etobicoke, Ontario, I'm Bridget Antwi for 100 Huntley Street.